So what we're going to do now is to set up your machine to program in Java, and we're going to use the Eclipse integrated development environment. So we can go directly to eclipse.org, and you'll see that there is a place to begin a download. So Eclipse has in it a Java compiler. So we don't need to go and get a Java developer's kit. The JDK, if the compiler that comes with Eclipse is good enough for you, and it is. So we will just go directly to download and unzip the Eclipse integrated development environment. The most recent version of Eclipse is what we will go for. And there's a whole bunch of them. And we are going to pick Eclipse for Java developers. You don't need the Enterprise Edition. That's the JEE stuff. What used to be called J2EE. But we're going to get the Eclipse IDE for Java developers, and I'm doing it in Windows 64-bit. There are also versions of Eclipse for Macintosh and Linux systems, and they work very, very much the same, which makes this very convenient. So I'm going to go and I'm going to ask for the 64-bit one, and then you pick the one that's closest to you. And it will be faster if you pick a nearby one. So I'm going to go to the University of Florida, and I'm going to save that. Eclipse doesn't come as an exe, and there isn't an install process for Eclipse. You just go and get it, and it's a zip file, and you unzip it. I'm going to drop it on my desktop so I'll be able to find it. The current version of Eclipse is called Juno. So every version of Eclipse has a name that's the next letter in the alphabet. So we had Indigo was the one before. Helios was the H one. So once you have this file downloaded, the Eclipse zip file, where you drop this is where Eclipse will be installed in double quotes. There is no install. So if I double click on this, now what do I have to do? I'm going to just extract all, and it is saying to me select a destination and extract files. Okay, well, let's put it in my documents. And it will make a new folder for us if we say put it in documents. 2012 items. Once you unzip the Eclipse zip file that we downloaded, you get a directory called Eclipse when you unzip it, and because it's not a normal Windows install, you don't get icons added to your desktop and your Windows thing. This is the actual Eclipse exe. So to run Eclipse, you run that, and what we need to do is to make not a copy of that, but a shortcut to that. So let's create a shortcut. And my shortcuts include the name of the Eclipse that we're using. So I'm going to say that this is Eclipse Juno, and it's the 64. So there's a whole bunch of them, and I only want to work with one at a time because I'll get mixed up. So I'm going to copy that shortcut and put it on my start menu or my desktop or wherever you like to have those so that you can find them. Now, let's double click on the shortcut that we created, and it will launch Eclipse Juno. So when you start using Eclipse, the first thing that will happen is that it will say what workspace do you want to work in? And the workspace is where you keep all of your Java programs. It's just a folder, and it will make a default one for you called Workspace. And we can use that as the default one and not have to ask this every time. Once you get, like you've got a lot of Java projects all over the place, you're going to have lots of different workspaces, and you can switch workspaces once we get in there. So once it opens up, you get this welcome page, and there are some tutorials and things that you can play with if you want to. What I would like us to do is to make a simple Java program to see if Eclipse is working. So you can close that stuff over there, and I'm going to make a simple Java project. I'll call it the first project, and I don't type well all the time. Well, I'm not using Git, so I'm not going to be warned that it can't find Git every time. Oh, the home is not set. This is another Git thing. Git is a source control which is becoming very popular now, and it's integrated in with Eclipse automatically, so we can ignore all of that. Here's our source folder in the project, and we're going to add a class. The name of a class in Java always starts with a capital letter. And we're going to click on this because we're too lazy to type it ourselves. It will put in a main method. And here's what it does. I'm going to throw these comments away, and inside of the main method, syso control space, it will type system.out.println for you. There's a bunch of little shortcuts like that. So here's the hello world message that we will send as proof that this Java project is running. So here's the play button. Always save the resources before launching. It just makes sense. If you've changed your code, you want to save it and run the new version. And here's the console window that automatically appears down at the bottom. So what we know for sure, we have Eclipse installed and it's working to make a Java program. And the next thing we'll do, if you're intending to do some Android programming, we will go and install the Android ADT. If you're just learning Android and you're not learning, if you're just learning Java, you're not using Android, then you stop here and you start learning the Java language just in the SE, Java SE. Okay, so now what we want to do is to go over to android.com, and we will spend a lot of time in here, and particularly go down to the bottom and pick the part for the developers. So this is where we're going to learn to program in Android. We are going to go down to the bottom and say get the SDK, so the Software Developers Kit for Android, and let's go ahead and go to the download page. Oh, look at that, it's right here already. Download the SDK for Windows, and I'm just going to save that on my desktop. It is it's an executable, so it's going to be a run, an install that you run, as opposed to Eclipse where you just unzip it. So I'm just going to save that to some place where I can find it, and then we'll go and look at the installation. So we'll go ahead and run this installer that we downloaded. I'm going to install it for anyone using this computer, although I can't imagine that there will be anyone except me. Now, here's where it suggests it will put it. Program files x86, Android SDK. So I'm a big fan of allowing these things to go where they want to go. And if you start changing things and then you have problems, well, it's not as easy to ask for help if you have to put an explanation of why you did something very strange in the middle of what went wrong. So I'm going to allow this to go where it wants to go. And it doesn't take that long to get installed, and we will go and have a look and make sure that it's actually there. I'm not going to start the SDK manager right now. I'm going to go and navigate around on the C drive, Program Files x86, and here's our new Android SDK that we have. So make sure that you can find everything. And the tricky thing that's going on here is that we've got the program files, which are 64-bit on this machine, and program files, which x86 means that's the 32-bit program files. Okay, so that was really quite easy, going and getting the Android SDK, and we need to do one more thing, and we have to get the plugin for Eclipse that will allow us to build the Android applications. So we're going to get the developer tools that are the plugin to Eclipse, and every time I do this it seems to be in a different place, so instead of me showing you where it is now, we might as well search for it. So if we type Eclipse ADT plugin, that should get us to where we need to be. I'm going to take this second one, installing the Eclipse plugin for Android developers, and see how that works for us. So it's telling us if we don't have Eclipse yet, we need to go and get it. And now we need to download the ADT plugin, but this is easier than it might appear at first. We don't actually go and do a download and then do an install. We ask Eclipse to do it for us, and we do it by taking this link. So I'm going to copy that link, and then I'm going to go into Eclipse and look under Help, Install New Software. Now, this is where we're going to paste that link. Now click Add, and it wants a name for this. So I'm just going to say these are the Android Developer Tools ADT plugin. How's that? And it will go and populate this. And we don't need the NDK plugins. That's for native developers. The Native Development Kit is for programming in Android at a lower level. It's done in C. So we're going to take these developer tools, the DDMS, and you don't actually know what all of these are for yet, but let's just take them all. We have to agree to the licenses. So I have read all of these. I studied them in great detail, and I know that I want to accept all of them. I don't know if you're laughing or not, but we're going with that. You are installing software that contains unsigned content, so Microsoft gets worried about this. Let's just say OK. You will need to restart Eclipse for the changes to take effect, so let's go ahead and do that and see what happens. Wasn't that easy though? Eclipse really makes adding plugins very, very convenient, and we will use a few of those as we go along. Well, there are some errors about this Git thing. Home is not set. That's another Git one. I'm not sure what's causing that. SDK Platform Tools component is missing. Okay. This version of ADT requires Android. Did I just say that this was really easy and it's just click and go? Maybe we've left something out. Platform Tools component is missing. I don't understand that, because the platform tools are there. I think that it's just we haven't told Eclipse where it is yet. So if we go up here, we have these two new little icons here. We have a virtual device manager and we have the SDK manager, and if we click on this, we are going to get something that is very nice. And it tells us what we have installed and what we don't have installed. So from within Eclipse you can get all the newest stuff, and what we need is a newer SDK tools. So there's update revision 21 is available. So let's take those. And Android 4.2, that's the latest one as of today. And let's go with just that. If you select all of these, if you say you want a software developer's kit for every version of Android all the way back to 1.5, it will take a very, very long time. And you might want to do that, but I never do anymore. Something will break all the time. I don't think I need a USB driver right now. Oh, yeah, maybe I'm going to leave that there. I might want to connect into a device, and I would need the USB driver. So I'm just going to click Install 9 Packages and see if that makes people happier. And again, I'm reading all of these licenses, and I'm going to accept all of them, and I'm going to install all of these newest things. So using the plugin, it gives you direct access to the most current tools, and in Android programming there's a great deal of overhead. So there's a new version of everything all the time, and you have to go and get the latest version and make sure that things are working in the latest version. And when you're learning Android, you're probably not learning it full time, so this updating something every couple of weeks, it seems, is a very high amount of overhead. And as you can tell from just doing a few of them, it takes a long time to do this. So I'm not going to make you watch this. I'm going to come back after these installs are finished. So that took quite a long time. I hope you went for a coffee or something. And when it's done, it says that the SDK and the AVD managers that you're currently using have been updated. And this is kind of important. Close the manager window and reopen it. And if you use Eclipse, run help check for updates. So this is what we have to do. We're going to say OK and close that. You can see that these things got installed. The important part is that the SDK tools must match the correct version of the plugin. If you don't do that, if they get out of sync, then all sorts of really wacky things happen. Wonky is the technical term for that. So we're going to go back into Eclipse and say check for updates. So Eclipse itself has an update that it wants to do for us. I didn't actually check for updates since we did this original install. So let's go ahead and do that. So I accept that. I guess we should have done that before. It never occurred to me that any of the plugins that you have are supposed to automatically be updated when you go and say check for updates. So restart Eclipse for this to take effect. So let's restart Eclipse now. And it's really very convenient. I mean, it's better than having to run around and find all of the updates to make sure that everything is in sync. Now we've still got this strange thing going on here with Git that I really don't care about. I think I don't care about it. So let's look at the SDK manager. So this is updated live when you open the SDK manager, the Android Software Developers Kit. We're going to install a couple of these, a couple of versions, and it depends on what your intention is. I would never go back to Android 1.5, but you can see that the major releases have an integer number from 3 up until today. Android 4.2 is level 17. That's kind of important. Okay, let's do one more thing before we leave here. Let's open the Android Virtual Device Manager, and we will see that we don't have any. A virtual device is a software Android device. We're going to make one to run our Android projects on, and I'm going to call it AVD42. I put my name in it so that I can have confidence that that is the one that I created. And we can choose what kind of a device we're creating it for. Let's just pick a Nexus 7. No, that's too big. It doesn't really matter. I think all of the rest of this we can leave as it is. Do we want to have an SD card? How about 512 meg on an SD card? That's pretty small, isn't it? I don't want to make it too big because it actually allocates the space for these things. Oh yes, the name of this cannot have special characters. Okay, so we now have a virtual device that we can use to run our Android application. And the next thing that we have to do is to make an Android project, the Hello World project, of course, in Android, and make sure that everybody can see everybody. So now we're going to make the Hello World Android project. So it's similar to making a Java project, but it's not the same. So we're going to say File, New Project instead of Java Project. And now, because of that plugin thing, we now have an Android project that we can build. And we're going to make an Android application project. So an Android app. And we have to give our application a name. My first app. And we have to specify the path to the classes. So hopefully you kind of understand what the package is, and we're going to use so the package name is your URL backwards, and this prevents naming conflicts. So if you make a class that has the same name as somebody else's class, there won't be a naming conflict because it's going to go into a folder, a unique path to the folder that has your class. And you know it's unique because you own this URL. No one else can use it. And that guarantees uniqueness of the class names. Okay. I think we can just leave everything else on that page the same. You specify the minimum required SDK, the target SDK, and the one that you want to compile with. Well, we only have one that we can compile with, and it's 4.2 because we only downloaded and installed one of them. Why don't we just make this really simple and say that we're just going to use 4.2, and that's the theme. We can play with themes at some point. Right now we just want to get a hello world to work. We can allow all of these to just default. This template depends on the Android support library. Man, oh man, oh man. So I didn't want to have to explain this now. But I'm going to go ahead and say let's install it. We have to have it at some point anyway. We're going to accept the license agreement. And now finish. The support library allows us to go backwards. So your app is, you can use things in the older versions while working from the newer versions. And that doesn't really make sense to you now, but that's okay. So it's busy running around building this project for us. It's a fairly complicated project. And eventually, if we've done everything right, all of the red X's will go away. And this fairly complicated folder structure is the minimum folder structure for an Android app. So remember, our objective is just to make Hello World that runs, and I'm going to right click on it and say run as an Android application. Now what will happen? It has to run on something. It has to run on a machine of some kind. And we only have one kind of a machine right now. We have an Android virtual device. And it, after some time waiting, it will pop up. And this takes a very long time, but you know that it has to build an entire software stack, including the entire Linux operating system, and then put the Java virtual machine on top of it and load all of the stuff in there. So getting this machine started does take quite a long time, and you don't have to do it every time you change the program. You can just leave this machine lying around. It doesn't look like a machine, does it? It looks like a window, but it is a machine, and it's an entire computing environment on your Mac or Windows box, whatever it is you're using. So eventually this will come up and say, "Hello world." So we're almost there. If you, oh, well, there it is. There's our Hello World, my first app running on this Android device. So what we know for sure is that we have Java installed correctly, we have Eclipse installed correctly, we have the Android Software Developers Kit installed, and we have the plugin, the Android Developers Tools plugin added to our Eclipse environment. And that's where we wanted to get. So we're not actually describing what's going on in any of this. We're just saying our machine is set up and now we can start to learn how to work with Android. Very good. This is a big step. It's not always achieved on the first try. In fact, most of the time it's not achieved on the first try. So if you are going back and doing it again, be patient with it. It can just take a couple of tries. I'll see you in the next video.